here are the many topics that we're going to look at in today's session. We're going to talk about setting search defaults and how you might find that to be of value to you. The item to bib navigation, suppressed record settings. This is something that's a really nice little tool. We'll talk also about the ISBN, ISSN validation, the overlay and merge function. The overlay and merge is a really big addition to Voyager. Batch suppress and unsuppressive records. We've also got updated tag tables and some things in acquisitions to know about, because there are some developments there that I think really are going to be pushing a much greater conversation among the different types of units, the cataloging and acquisitions units. And so I think you need to be aware of the fact that this kind of thing can be done, whether or not it's enabled. Well, you'll learn more about that here as we go through the session. So going on to look first off at search defaults. Starting with Voyager 7, we have the option to set bibliographic record searching defaults in cataloging. Originally, this function was expected only for the cataloging client, but since the staff-side searching is something that's available in all of the staff clients, the process or the options were made available to everyone who wanted to have them in place. So we can carry on with the retain last search option, and I'll show you what this means in practice. We can also choose to establish a default search tab, and so meaning that would be the search type or search tab that would automatically appear whenever we would try to search for something in the database. We can designate a default search index on the index selection tab or on the builder tab that functions independently of whether or not those tabs are selected as the defaults. So you'll see that we've got a number of different possibilities with regard to how we set these search defaults. Personally, I find it to be a very individual type of thing. Either you like it or you don't, and so here now you have some additional options to be working with. So in this example, we see that, in fact, retain last search is enabled. And the reason that we know this is that the text has remained inside the search for box. It's highlighted, and so we would be able to go ahead and perform the search again, replace the text that we're searching for, all of those different sorts of things. The retain last search function that appears in the cataloging client, so on the workflows tab of the preferences, acts as a switch that turns on the new search defaults, or when we have the box checked, it gives us this retain last search function. So if we choose to uncheck, as you'll see here, when the box is unchecked, then we get the new searching defaults. There are, of course, a variety of things that can come into play with this, and part of this being what happens when we don't necessarily have all of the communication happening to everyone, is that somebody might decide to designate a particular type of index that then the system administrator says, oh, nobody uses that one, and disables it for use. Well, then that suddenly becomes a bit of a problem, and that the default search goes away. I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. So with the retain last search turned off, then we see the two new buttons that are appearing here. And so we've got the default tab, the save settings, and remember that we can be deciding what the search indexes for the index selection and builder tabs are going to be, independent of whether or not they are the default tab. Now, the other thing to take note of here on this screenshot is that from this screenshot, we know that the default tab is another one. And the reason is that the default tab button here is active. Were it the default tab, it would be grayed out. So it gives us a way to be looking at these things. I'm going to take us over to the cataloging client and open that up so that we can just explore what sorts of things happen. And just waiting for it to finish initializing. And then going to the Options and Preferences area. So here, once we are at the Workflow tab, this is where we see that we have Retain Last Search enabled. And just as a reminder, I'll click on OK at this stage of the game and open up my search area and give a try on something here. Let's go with, let's say spices as part of our title, in fact, in that left anchored position. So I perform the search, and of course we see that there are 4 entries where the term spices is, that's the first word in the entry. If I click on search again, of course it takes me back to the search window. There we've got spices in place. Because it was selected, if I started typing, of course, I'd be able to replace the text. Now, let me go ahead and cancel out of here and turn on the other options. And so, as I indicated earlier, the Retain Last Search checkbox is the switch. So, by having done that, you'll see now that when I go to search, I have the new options available to me. So here is the default tab, which is grayed out, and that means that this particular index, or this tab, is the one that will automatically come up every time I perform a search. Let's say, though, that I prefer to use the keyword searching. So I click on my default tab, and then that will come into play. On the Index Selection tab, maybe my preference is to be searching for things by ISBN. And in this particular case, using the ISBN 13 will match ISBN 10's entry. And so I'll save the settings on that one. And on the Builder search, maybe, let's see, what do I like here? Maybe I like subject, and I like for my terms to be, let's see, any of these. So you can see how I can choose the term connectors, so when I have multiple entries for these. So I'll use a Save Settings there. So since we've now got the keyword tab set as the default, let me just give a try here on the search for developing technologies. This is Connie, who's just joined the call. Okay, let's just see here. Apparently we didn't get something there that was where we had it as a phrase. So instead, just changing the nature of the search so that we're getting entries that fit in with our search results. So I'll select this book called Hyperborder, and of course it retrieves results. Now, if I go back to the search, of course, it's gone back to the keyword tab because that's what I said should be the default. And if I want to try something here, of course, I've now got my default search type in place on the Index Selection tab. And if I had a number, an ISBN that I'd be able to put in, of course, being able to perform that type of search, the whole time, of course, being able to adjust according to what my needs are, and making a change to the type of search that I want to perform, and being able to adjust this quite literally as we want to go on the fly, making those changes from day to day, and so on. Then on the Builder tab, of course, there's the subject kind of thing, and let's just see what happens if we try adventure travel. And performing that search, and we come up with a whole bunch of results as a result of performing that particular search. Now, the thing that I indicated a moment ago was that, and here we come back to the keyword tab. Let's say, for example, that I had set personal name to be my default search type. So, you know, and I'm using that particular search type over time. I'm going to just go ahead and close out of cataloging for a moment and open up system administration so you can see what it looks like when someone comes along and disables a search type and doesn't communicate that bit of information to you. So I'm going to the search area. Let's see here, get down to the personal name area. So here, just editing this kind of thing and saying, suppress that from use in the staff clients. So I'll save that, and now reopen the cataloging client, and you'll see what happens when we give this a try. Here you can see the message that's popped up. The default settings for the index selection tab cannot be displayed because the specified index has changed. That's because that personal name thing is now gone, or hidden, actually, I guess would be the more correct term. So we're able to still carry on with our search. It's just now that personal name doesn't exist in this list of options. So that one really being requiring good communication between the system administrator and the staff, making sure that everybody knows what is available, what's being used, and so on. So that's giving you an idea there about the search defaults. Before I take us back over to the slides, any questions on setting these search defaults? Okay. Just one other comment about this is that I personally prefer the retained last search, but that really is a very personal type of thing that I think everybody has to take into account. Give it a try, see whether or not you prefer it, and then go on from there. Okay, let me just go ahead here, and I'm going to make that into my default tab for now, and in fact I'm going to also re-enable my search type. Going back to the slides and taking a look then at the item to bib navigation. Not a very fancy kind of thing, but surely a really nice one, being able to navigate from item to bibliographic records without having to perform a whole lot of intermediate steps. And so it really does reduce the number of steps required to retrieve a bib record whenever we have an item record open. And the same sort of thing, of course, going on with a holdings record. 3 ways to do this sort of thing. We can use the Get Bib button, which is present on the toolbar. We can navigate to the record text menu and choose from it the Retrieve Bibliographic Record. There's also a keyboard shortcut called, which is Control-J, that will perform that same kind of function. So here we see an example of this where initially the item record for Earth's water crisis had been retrieved. Perhaps we were doing some editing, changing a barcode, applying a status, a note maybe, different sorts of things that might be going on. Well, here we see the Get Bib button that is available to us. We simply click on it, and we're able to retrieve the bibliographic record quickly and easily. Let me show you a couple of examples of this. And so here I'm going to begin just by retrieving a couple of items by their barcode. So here we have one item, gray matter, why it's good to be old. And so you can see that as a result of having retrieved the item record, that I can just click on the Get Bib, and it retrieves that entry for me. Let me go ahead and retrieve another entry by barcode. And this time we have making up the Rococo. And so from here at the record text menu, choosing the retrieve bibliographic record, and of course when we're at the record text menu, we also get the reminder about the keyboard shortcut. So it's giving us a way to you know, just all of those reminders all the way along about how we can proceed to get hold of these things. Now, a couple of other things, and I'm just going to close out of all of these records and retrieve one more item. And so here we have Exotic Animal Field Guide. Notice the Get Holdings button being active as well. So I can now quickly and easily retrieve everything that relates to that particular item. And so it is it's very handy to be able to do that kind of thing. So just really reducing the number of steps that need to be done in order to retrieve that information, really on the basis of what you might be working on at any given time. So that gives us an idea about things in connection with the item to bib navigation, and along the way, of course, also the holdings variety of things. So making for a much more efficient type of workflow. So that takes us through that particular area. Questions on any of this? Okay, if not, I will take us back over to the slides, and we'll move on to our next step, our next portion of things here that relates to the suppressed records settings. Starting now with Voyager 7, we can easily identify suppressed records. Until now, bib and muthead records that are suppressed from the LPAC we've always been able to figure them out in the cataloging client because we had access to all of that kind of information. Well, now we've got the ability to show this sort of thing in both circulation and acquisitions as well, and really provides for a much more efficient searching and retrieving of records because the status is much more easily known. To do this, we are able to specify a background and text color to identify the records quickly and easily. So really, until Voyager 7, there was no indication that a record was suppressed except in the cataloging client on the system tab. So now that manual step has been removed, and you can go to town on working with the various colors. So here we see in the session defaults and preferences for cataloging the new entry that's been included, which is the search result colors for suppressed records. And as a default, it's going to come out with the white background and black text, and you can really just make it anything that you want, something that's going to grab your attention, something that makes it easy for you to see, all of those sorts of things. So once we make these settings, then we can see something like this, where when we're looking at a results list, that the items that are identified by the dark blue background with the white text are in fact suppressed from view. And so it gives us a way to manage that portion of things. So just to show you what this one looks like, going off first off to just try a search on industrial. And when we look at this particular result set, we don't know that anything is in fact suppressed from view. If I click on the OK button and we go to the System tab, well, there we can get the information that's telling it to us that way. But again, not very efficient because you're having to go through all of those various steps. Well, if we just try this again, but after setting background colors and things like that, here I am on the Colors Fonts tab, and let's say that I want to choose something rather bright, and in fact I can define custom colors if I feel so inclined, including getting right down to hue, saturation, and luminance numbers, and the red, green, and blue settings if you have a very, very specific color in mind. So let's say that I'm going to choose this particular color as my background. Well, the black text is okay on there, but maybe we can find something that's a little bit better. And so I'm going to choose something for the text color, and I'm going to make it that sort of soft yellow type of thing. So now that I've done that, I can go ahead and perform my search again, and now we have that immediate clue that that group of 4 items all are suppressed from view in the OPAC. So here the thing about the colors is, if you have any issues with colors, maybe you just don't do well with them, you're able to make these sorts of changes and in such a way that it's going to be easy for you to see. Now, there is, of course, one other way to know it, and it's only if you've got the bib record actually open, is that this particular icon here in the upper left corner is it's dimmed or grayed out. And if we make a change to that, let me go ahead and just unsuppress that. You can see how now the icon shows the red, and it's not nearly as dim as it was a moment ago. But if we put it back, you can see how it does change color. So not a very obvious clue as to whether or not something is suppressed from view. So using the options there to set the colors can really be a very much more helpful kind of thing. So that being kind of a superficial change, but a helpful one. In that it gives a way to just make the workflow a little bit more efficient. That takes us through the suppressed records portion of things. Questions on that before we move to ISBN or ISSN validation? Okay, let us go back to the slides then. Okay, let me retrieve a record. Just thinking about a good example here. On the System tab, there are other things that we can do here. We're choosing to suppress something from view in the OPAC, or saying this we want to prepare this item to be included in an export file. And the history shows who's been doing what with a record. And so if I was to now edit this record, and let's just say for sake of argument I'm going to add something to the end of the 050, when I go to save the record, it shows the fact that I was editing in the record, the fact I did it at the cataloging desk, and what the action was. So okay, so just to give you a little bit more on that, create means when the record was first added to the database. And so that could be, as it is in this case, the fact that it happened as part of an implementation process. And so that's why we haven't got an individual operator's name or a cataloging desk. And so because the data was being handled in a large batch elsewhere. Then when we do an update, it gives us a clue about exactly when, who the operator was, and various kinds of things like that. And so the history can have as many entries in it as is required over time. Only you in your database can see that information. All right, let us go back over to the slides and take a look at the ISBN, ISSN validation options. With Voyager 7, any operators who create or update MARC records, in fact, in any of the core clients, may now validate the ISBN or ISSN entries. And notice that it also includes the EAN 13, which is more commonly used in Europe. Other details that we have for this is that whenever a record is saved to the database, the designated fields are going to be validated. And so we've got the ISBN validation occurring for the 020 subfield A and 024 subfield A when there's a first indicator 3 present. The ISSN validation occurring for the 022 subfield A and 022 subfield Z. With Voyager 7 working in bibliographic records only, and there is a validation algorithm at work to ensure that the correct format is observed. Does someone have a question? Okay, doesn't look like it. So the validation algorithm actually has 3 pieces to it. The first one is that it looks for the number to be of valid length. Valid length, of course, 8 digits for ISSN, 10 or 13 for ISBN. Let's see, we've got a weighted sum verified for each character in the number. And all of this kind of thing coming along with something called modulus 11. And the third thing is that it's going to check that the number has a valid check digit. So there's an ISBN, ISSN engine functioning beneath the surface to perform all of this kind of thing for us. So, in fact, if you want to know more about how this kind of thing works, perform a Google search sometime for modulus 11, and that's MODULUS, and then the digit 11, to see what that's all about. You can actually go through the process of verifying the weighted sum for each of the characters and figuring out the check digit. So it really does give you some sort of mathematical treats if that you're of that sort. One other note about this is that there are normalization routines at work that convert the standard numbers into a canonical format so that validation can be performed. What that means, in effect, is that hyphens and suffixes and so on and so forth are essentially ignored. So that everything gets collapsed together and you get all of the digits that are taken into account. And so it means that, that we don't have to be concerned about those sorts of things or changing the manner in which we've been entering the ISBNs or ISSNs along the way. In the cataloging client, you'll see on the validation tab 2 new checkboxes. Bypass ISBN validation, bypass ISSN validation. When they are unchecked, it means that they are active and working for us. So this will be something that you would want to be checking once you get going with the Voyager 7 clients and are wanting to make sure that the information that you're entering really is truly correct. So once we work with this, and here we see an example of what happens when an ISBN entry is incorrect. And it can be incorrect according to any of those three things that's going on in the validation algorithm. Maybe we're missing a digit, maybe the check digit is incorrect, maybe there are other values that are out of sorts. So when we save a record to the database and it is incorrect, the standard number error report pops up. Notice that there is the option to save that information, the option to cancel. Well, initially anyway, I would recommend strongly that you're canceling it so that you can do a double check. Did I enter the numbers incorrectly? Am I missing a check digit? What sorts of things there might be. In the event that the item that you've got in hand maybe was published incorrectly with an invalid ISBN in it, then you choose to save that record to the database, knowing that somewhere along the way there's going to be something that's going to need some attention. So this particular example shows a record imported via remote connection, and some limited editing. It's then being saved to the database. Well, it turns out that the ISBN 13 entry is incorrect, and so it has caused the standard number error report to pop up. So we would land up then making the corrections, figuring out what exactly was the problem, perhaps having to go so far as to perform some research to determine what in fact is necessary. So in this particular situation, it's the save to DB action that's activating the validation process. Let's just take a quick look at what sorts of things happen when we in fact import a record that has an invalid ISBN entry in it. So here I am choosing to import, and here I've got a few limited import examples to fit this particular category. So let's go with drawing on the artist within, and we can have a look at the record. So we see here that we've got some sort of a change that needs to be made, and or we would be putting in perhaps local information, including various sorts of things that would be making sense to us. So I attempt to save the record to the database, and there comes my standard number error report. So here's the case where I would now need to go and make some sort of search for what is the correct detail that we would want to be including, or perhaps finding that record at another location where the typo had not been made. Now, another way to do this, of course, is to perform a Z39.50 search. And so here I'm making a connection to the Library of Congress database to take a look for something, and in this case choosing the name keyword, and we want to get hold of an item by Nancy Rayner. Let's just make sure that it is indeed correct. Yes, it is the title, Acrylic Revolution, and so that's the one that I was looking for. Now I'm just actually going to force this to be an incorrect entry. So here you can see that I'm going to take off I'm going to replace the check digit 9 with a check digit 7. And when I again try to save it to the database, we get our error report popping up. Well, if I take it back now and actually make the correction, put the check digit in accurately, save it to the database, it goes through just fine, although in this case, as you can see, I've got some duplication in my database. We'll close out of that and not take that one into account right now. But as you can see how that sort of thing, again, making sure that things are just as accurate as possible. I'm going to take us back to the slides for a second, because there's another option for us in cataloging that's not available for use in the circulation or acquisitions clients. And that is seeing the validate ISBNs, validate ISSNs entries that's on the record text menu. So we have a bibliographic record open, and even before we save it to the database, we have the opportunity to validate the standard numbers. So here, just actively checking to see if the ISBN is valid before saving the record to the database. So it's the kind of thing that would then give you an indication right away as to whether or not you would need to make a change. So here, once we've got that sorted, we can see that the ISBN validates successfully. If not, it will tell us that. And so it gives us a way to be working with that kind of thing. So here, returning to our example, and I want to just clear my remote connection, and I want to use the import function once again. This time I'll pick the last mortal generation, and so from here, choosing the option to validate ISBNs. And in this case, it is not correct, so we know that there is something that needs to be looked after. And in this example, in fact, we are missing the very first digit of the ISBN. It should be a 1. So in fact, this is a case where we're looking at the first part of things in relation to the validation algorithm, or is the number of correct length. So it's short by 1. So we'll put the 1 in place. We use the validation entry again, and then it tells us that indeed that entry is now correct. So really being able to use this to just, we hope, improve accuracy, prevent the transposition of digits, all of those sorts of things that can come into play when we're working, especially nowadays with the 13-digit ISBNs that can really complicate matters. Questions on the ISBN ISSN validation? Go ahead. It does not block the record from being added. One of the reasons behind all of that is that if the validation fails and yet what you've got in place and the item in hand match, then there's a problem somewhere else. What you've got now is accurate data entry, but that there's another issue that needs to be going on. So it does then allow you to save that record to the database and then perhaps be pursuing it later. Okay. Taking us back over to the slides and on to the overlay and merge. And as I indicated earlier, this is probably the really big thing that comes along with Voyager 7. What this gives us the opportunity to do is to overlay one existing bibliographic record in the database with another. Of course, there are some other options that we can be taking into account as well, such as using the existing replace option when we're importing an updated record that perhaps we've obtained from elsewhere. On top of that, though, we can now overlay an existing bib record in the database with another existing bib record. So this would be a case where perhaps there are some suppressed records attached to purchase orders or suppressed records that are part of circulation transactions or other sorts of things like that. And we'll go through a number of the different examples here in the course of this session. We have the opportunity to delete or retain the source record. We can be relinking the holdings and items records to to the target record, and preserving fields from the target record when we're using a merge profile, so that if we have certain fields that we wish to protect, we can in fact be doing that. So as we make our way through, in fact, a couple of definitions. I think it's really important to understand the difference between target record and source record. For the purposes of overlay, the target record is one whose contents will be replaced, but that record always remains in the database. It's the source record whose contents will overlay the content that's found in the target. We can choose to move the subordinate records to the target record, and we may delete the source record. So we have a variety of things that we can be doing, and it is, as you'll see here, it can be a complicated matter, and that we really need to be taking care in working our way through it. A couple of scenarios just to help you with understanding about how or why you might use the overlay and or merge functions. So we have a situation where a database maintenance project is being carried out by the cataloging unit to eliminate duplicate bib records that are suppressed and no longer required. These bib records have been identified by means of a query, maybe using Access or Analyzer in order to get hold of that information. Another possibility is that an acquisitions operator inadvertently selects an incorrect bib record for a line item that's being added to a purchase order. The error is noticed, and a request is made to have a cataloger obtain a correct record and to substitute it by overlay or merge. So these are a couple of possibilities, and then of course you can probably be thinking of numerous other ones where this sort of thing fits the situation. Let's take a look at some screenshots first to demonstrate the steps that are going to be needed to use the functions successfully, and then I'll go through a number of different examples. So here we see the situation where we've got our source record and our target record, and you can see what the differences are. The target, which is bib 58266, is for the title Fine Red Cat. It's going to be overlaid by the source, bib 58280, for the title Red Cat. So something else just to be taking note of is that Fine Red Cat is the active record. In other words, I brought it forward, so it's sitting there and ready to have the contents of it replaced. At the very bottom of the screen, there is you're seeing something that comes from the record text menu, the option to overlay bib records. And among the things that's in the record text menu is that once we put our mouse pointer over top of the entry overlay bib records, it opens up a submenu that says Open, Bibliographic ID, or Search. In the case of open, it means that this other record is open on the screen. And potentially we could have many records that are in fact open on the screen. And so we're really wanting to take care when we're making these sorts of changes. The bibliographic ID, so this would mean having the bib ID of the record the source record whose contents are going to replace the target record, or using the search, which would open up the bibliographic search option for us to be working with. Something that in the course of my working with Voyager 7, I have found it helpful to think of this as overlay bibliographic records with the open record that I'm seeing over here to the right. So just to reiterate that, overlay bibliographic records, and in fact I wish they would put the text in here that says with the open record that I've got displaying over here. it helps me to think about that in that way so that I know what kinds of things I'm trying to accomplish. Once I select the bib record that I want to use as the source, I am presented with this particular message. You are about to overlay target bib record 58266 with source bib record 58280, blah, blah, blah. Now, notice that I do have the option to back out. I can click on no and just step away from that process altogether. Alternately, I can make some additional choices. There's a drop-down list that appears here, and right now I have the overlay record option. Also in my list is a merge option, so where I would be able to bring the contents of two records together on the basis of fields I've indicated I wish to protect. I can choose here to relink the holdings and items, so that would move the holdings and items from the source record to the target record, and I can then choose to delete the source bib. There's no way to undo the operation. Are you sure you want to, essentially, are you sure you want to proceed? And if the answer is yes, then of course it will proceed. In this example, we will not relink holdings and items, and we will not delete the source bib. So by clicking on yes, we then have the situation or the result of the overlay process. There are now two bib records, that is both target and source, in the database for the title Red Cat. So we have 58280, 58266, both of them for Red Cat, and the author being Peter Spiegelman. So just to recall, in this case, I chose not to delete the source record in this particular example. Before I go on to showing you an example of this, a live example, questions? Okay, let me then take us to the cataloging client, and here I want to retrieve, in fact I've identified or essentially built some examples into the training database so that they are easy for me to be finding. Let me take a look for the title Celtic Fortifications. So here we see indeed that we have two such examples, and that we have bib 57516 and bib 60749. So in this, I'm just going to be moving things around here a little bit so that we can see things a little more clearly. In the training database, one of the things that we did to help with our own learning and to provide an additional learning tool for all of you is to insert a 500 tag into the records to indicate what type of record this was. So here we're seeing target for overlay without relink or delete. So it's providing an instruction that says what should be happening with this particular pair of records. So this one's showing as target, the other record displaying as source. So the thing we need to be doing in this particular case then is make sure that we bring the target record forward. So it's the one that's sitting, it now is the active record. And just moving things around a little bit again. Now I'm going to choose my record text menu, and from there go to the overlay bibliographic records. And you can see how just as I put the mouse pointer over top of overlay, it opened up the submenu. And if I move over to the open entry, it shows me what is the other open record that's appearing. So I could simply go ahead and select that item, or I could be entering a bib ID for a record that would be acting as a source. This one, entering a bib ID concerns me a little bit just because of the possibility of making an error when entering the bibliographic record ID. So anyway, take that one into consideration should you find that to be a problem or a blessing for you. It's the sort of thing, again, different strokes for different folks. Then, of course, the search option pops up the searching window. Now, let me just go ahead and return to the overlay bib records. This time I'm going to go through with selecting the other open record. So remember that bib 60749 is the source. So I'm going to select it. So from here, again, I get my message that says this is what you're about to try to do, and really, do you want to proceed? In this case, I really do want to simply overlay the record. Notice that there is a merge profile that's available to us as well. So we'll go with the overlay. We'll not relink the holdings or items, and we'll not delete the source bib. So in other words, we'll end up having a pair of bibliographic records that are identical in the database. So we'll say yes to that. And the magic has happened, and now we get to see what is going on. And in fact, the trick is that the content of the source record has now overlaid what was in the target record. And we'll know that because it now says source for overlay as displaying here. And so we really have made quite a change with regard to what sorts of things that we can be doing here, and giving us a different record altogether. Now, in this particular case, the records were essentially identical except for that target and source information. That might not always be the case. Maybe it would be a different edition of an item. Maybe they would be similar titles but not identical. And so you can just be thinking of a whole variety of ways to be using this particular function. Questions on what you've just seen? Okay, now before we go any further, I'd like to just recommend that we take a short break so that we can come back and look at some of the other overlay and merge options and just show you exactly what sorts of things do happen as a result of that.